I'm James Bull, Head of Packaging at Tesco. Also sit on the Advisory Council for Packaging to Government and the Advisory Board for the Plastic Pact. So in my spare time I nip back to Tesco and try and nudge the team around what we do with packaging, but I got asked to talk about what was relevant today. And at first what sprang into mind was we're still reeling from Brexit. There's lots of pending legislation, struggling to get any resource, let alone HGV drivers, inflation, material availability, global warming, carbon, blah, blah, blah. If I go down that route, I'll be depressing and setting a very bad scene for today. So I'm going to move on past that, but acknowledge that actually there's a really tough backdrop to business at the moment. There's a really tough time across the entire supply chain. You guys are all swallowing that too. It's tough. But beyond that, I'm going to try and put a bit of positivity about what we're trying to do at Tesco, who we are, what we're trying to do, and where we're trying to get with packaging. Just a bit of a recap on Tesco very quickly. Second biggest employee in the country, 360,000 colleagues. Where do I go next? Sustainable Retailer of the Year in 2020. Shortlist, fingers crossed again for this year. Over 3,800 shops in the UK. And we operate in 5 countries now, a few less than we used to. From a charity point of view, we donate over £100 million, 109 last year, and 20 million is also generated from our customers and colleagues. So a lot from the business, but an awful lot from our colleagues and our customers, which is fantastic. And then you get into our sales, 53 plus billion. And what is quite scary is we impact on 80 million shopping trips a week. So lots of people to impact also means lots of packaging that they take away from Tesco. What that really means from my point of view, and they don't like putting this on the slides and I'll whisper, so, but we deal with about 1 million tonnes of packaging a year. And that equates to roughly 80 billion units of packaging a year. So it's quite eye-watering, just the numbers that churn through a Tesco business and what I then have to think about and how we try and influence that around the world. And that's 40,000 products around a global supply chain, pretty much touching every country in the world. So it's not just about what we do on the UK shores, it's about what happens around the globe to make things work and make things better. I'll just skip on through a few. Our latest purpose, and we revamp about every 3 years, and this launched a month or so back now. And a lot of the words remain the same, but what's really important is planet is now part of our purpose. So serving our customers, communities and planet a little better every day. And that's really powerful because it's moved in. Planet has become the heart now of what Tesco is really considering, thinking about in everything we do. Again, won't go into too much around the COP announcements and that side of things, but just at the weekend, in a very powerful statement in line with other retailers, we're looking at how we halve the impact of our shopping basket, how we halve the impact of everything to do with the supply chain of food, the materials used, the carbon footprint to move it around the globe. That's huge. That's to 2030. But if I look at that from a packaging point of view and go, how do I halve the impact of my packaging? I'm starting to talk about hundreds of thousands of tons of material I've got to lose. I'm starting to talk about billions and billions of pieces of packaging I've got to stop using. I've got to think about how I can get customers, the citizens of this country at first, but other countries around the world, to adopt a different way of dealing with packaging. How do we go? How do we move forward? How do you forget about single use, that whole make and dispose linear process, and get more into circularity and use and reusability really being a thing? It's not today. We try. But it's a real struggle. So there's a long, long way to go on a journey in a very short space of time if we're truly going to make a difference and start impacting some of these huge ambitions we've got. And when I say ambition, it's a need. We've got to move in a different direction. And retail at the heart can influence across the world. As I've said, 40,000 products around the globe touching every country. The statements we make then go out to every FMCG, every supplier around the world that deals with us, having to then think about their strategies, their procedures, their supply chains, their choices, and how that really impacts on the environment, how that really impacts on the citizen and the customer of the countries that they operate in. And hopefully that generates a positive ripple effect, as we've seen in the past, but a lot more to do in that space. So back to the customer again. So we talk to customers an awful lot. We generate thousands of interactions a week with customers to generate insight, because insight is king to a business, like especially a retail business, on how do you make your choices, what do you stock your shelves with, how do you serve your customer better every day. And as you look at that, towards the top of the list, and this is a little bit out of date now, but realistically, when we talk to customers, that we hear the same thing. So I'm comfortable to still have this on the screen, that absolutely mental health rose to the top, especially through the pandemic. It was a really tough time for people, and still is to this day. But beyond that, points 2 and 3 on what was most concerning: climate change, environmental damage. They're putting that before their own health. Just think about that for a second. That is very powerful, and again, starts to endorse why we put planet at the heart of our purpose as a business now. Touched on some of this. It's climate change generally. Broadly, we've got lots to do. We've got to move forward. I'm not going to go into the quotes. I'm not going to provide lots of notes in the interest of time, and then I hope I can give you guys some time for Q&A as well. Most people, when I'm stood in front of them, want to ask me a load of questions, more broadly than packaging normally. But again, good luck to you guys if you want to ask some questions. I'll look forward to ducking and diving as I go. Net emissions we've touched on, so I'll skip past that. So our packaging ambitions, where are we really with this? Before I get into the detail on the slide, what do I do and what do I try and lead the team to do within Tesco? And it's about probability. The amount of people that knock on my door to sell me a new piece of packaging, the list is endless. But they'll talk to me about something that is technically possible, technically proven in a lab. Does that work for the citizen? Does that work at the curbside? Does that work for you guys when you go to your array of different bins that, depending on what county you're in, different colours, different standards, this goes in that bin, this is mixed, that's isolated, etc. It's crazy. And that's before you then get to the messaging on pack that says, deliver this via TerraCycle, post this to this free post, turn left, turn right, go backwards, go forwards. How do we deal with all of those materials? Coming back to my original point, we deal with billions, over 70 billion pieces of material. So I'm expecting the citizens of this country to deal with those billions of pieces. And to that point, turn left, turn right, put that in that box. No, put it in a different coloured box because you're in a different county council, etc., etc. It's really complicated. So beyond that, I try and look at what is the most probable, what's the heartland of what's the easiest thing to try and help customers do, or try and encourage customers to do, or try and influence businesses, which is more often the case, and the supply chain, to adapt slightly their choices so it generates something that's slightly more simple than today. And it's baby steps at first, but we're rolling forward, and I'll come on to what that really means. But where we really are is everything's either got to be recyclable or reusable. If it's not, we're making the wrong choices. As an industry, we're making the wrong choices. If it can't be recyclable or it can't be reusable. But we've got the marketeers and the vanity side of marketing, the amount of different products. Just one from a big brand that one of my team was taking me through earlier this week. They've gone from something one way up to the other way up. They've made the cap bigger so it stands up, but it looks fantastic. It's beautiful. They've put a load of metallic ink and print on there. All of a sudden, very difficult for that to be managed properly without contaminating the stream that deals with that part of it. And yeah, it looks beautiful. Actually, it's a step backwards when you look at it through the sustainability lens. We've got to do better as an entire supply chain to really balance this out. Yes, still make beautiful products, but do it in a way that is sustainable. Do it in a way when you've got consideration of highly probable that that piece of material at end of life from a packaging perspective can be dealt with and dealt with responsibly. And at the moment, there's an awful lot that isn't. Use recycled materials where possible. So recycled content, all of a sudden your carbon footprint of what you're producing goes down dramatically. You're not generating that virgin pull upon the planet. You're doing something that is reusing something, recycling it, converting it. Sorry if I'm telling you guys to suck eggs, but it's really important that we get this message out to everybody. And then beyond that, we've got to help our customers do those things, recycle or reuse. Really challenging with reuse, really complicated with recycling, but it's got to get better over time. To make it easy, we simply use 4Rs as our sort of barometer of what we do. For everything we look at, do we actually need it? Can we remove it? If we can remove it, get rid. Why put it there for vanity's sake, or to make something look pretty, or to put an extra layer within a box? It's just not needed more often than not. And by the end of this year, we will have taken 1.5 billion pieces of that unrequired stuff out of the packaging portfolio of Tesco. More than that if you count the brands, that's from an own label perspective. Beyond that, once we've removed what we can and what makes sense to get rid of, how big is that piece of packaging? My old CEO got our major supply base, our top 150 suppliers together in a room, and got a load of products, Tesco and own label, together. And it was part of an event to launch these 4Rs. And he got a big pair of scissors, and he went along and chopped the top off lots of different things. He took great pleasure in doing it, but if you take a big multi-pack of crisps, I'm not going to name brands, but a big multi-pack of crisps, more often than not, the crisps fill 40%, 30%, you've got all of this material. But that's for presence on the shelf. It's back to that what does the marketeer do versus the others. And then you've got a load of boxes of cereal that you open the box of cereal, you look inside, and the product's halfway down. And I could go on and on. I'll stop there, again, in the interest of time. But we've got to push to make sure that we use less material. The simplest way is pack that product nice and tight. The problem we've got is how do you engage with customers then about it? So from a Tesco point of view, when we've done the reduction, we've put a reduction message on pack to explain that we're doing that for the greater good. And it's going really well. And customers are engaging and recognising the Rs, and we put remove Rs, reduce Rs when it's recyclable, etc. So again, talked about remove, talked about reduce, then you get to reuse. How do you start reusing? So as a business, we've engaged in a proposition with Loop where we're basically taking everyday products and putting them into containers that are a little bit more functional, a little bit more long-lasting, predominantly aluminium and glass, but paying a deposit against that product. But that deposit then is returned if that piece of packaging comes back to us. If not, at the end of use, the deposit will stay live in the background, but you can give us that product back and we'll give you the next one for the price of the product within, rather than obviously that duplicate deposit. Really interesting concept, long way to go. It's only in 10 stores. It's only been launched for just over a month, but we're just starting to test and learn with customers about what are the ways in which you can move on from a single-use piece of packaging to a reusable piece of packaging. And then beyond that, we've got to make everything recyclable. Already mentioned it, already touched on it. It's really important to help generate circularity, help generate loops. And within that, we've looked, and again, back to what can the citizen, what can the customer do? And at the moment, the customer can't do that much with certain materials. The biggest proportion of that is flexible, soft plastics, however you describe it. So your carrier bags, your crisp wrappers, your pouches of baby food, pet food, etc., your peelable film off a punnet of strawberries, whatever it may be. All of that flexible material at the moment, more often than not, predominantly county councils around the country won't collect that material. We as Tesco have started to collect that material now. And we're processing at the moment somewhere between 6 and 8 tons a week of material that customers are bringing back to us of that form. And we've put that out to just over 1,000 stores now across our large store estate in the UK. So any customer that shops at Tesco can bring all of that material back to us and we will manage it, because they can't do the responsible thing at curbside. Now, eventually that's got to change at curbside, but as a stopgap, we need to prove, and other retailers are doing this too. This isn't just look at Tesco, Tesco's great. This has got to be about all retail encouraging different shopping habits. And we're pushing on in that space as one example of how we can help to prove that things can be recycled and generate a positive market, a positive loop for that material in the future. So there's some headlines of what we're trying to do, but hopefully you all agree that using a 4R methodology is actually really simple, really straightforward, and you can take any piece of material, whether you're a packaging expert or not, and start to ask those 4 simple questions, and you can get to some simple answers. And that then empowers the army of Tesco, all of my buying teams, all of my sourcing teams, all of the hubs around the world that deal country by country. They can start to think about that methodology and use it. You've not got to be a technical expert to ask those 4 questions and move things forward. So again, part of my role is to keep it as simple as possible and empower as many people as possible to ask the right questions, do the right things. I could get really complicated now. Well, I say really complicated. This is still quite high level, but it could be quite dull to go through this. But to help with this, we've categorized materials. We've basically said, right, what can be used positively? So if you take the green section of that, our preferred materials are preferred because they've got a high probability. That high probability of the customer being able to do the right thing with them and be able to recycle them. Then you've got some things that actually we don't like because of either toxins or just that they just won't go through a recycling process. They've just not got a positive end of life available to them at this moment in time. And we change this list on an annual basis, we review it. But where we are at the moment, things that we just can't manage as a country, not as a business, but as a country. And then in the middle, we've got a bit that's actually the really complicated bit. We know it's not that preferable. We know it's not going to be recycled or collected or managed with high levels of probability. But we also know if we take it away, we're going to cause some real problems because there isn't another solution. Whereas the red materials, we know we can convert those into the green materials and we can move forward. But in the middle, there's a bit of a sticking point of some really complicated pieces. So again, we're trying to be simple enough for our approach, but then also pragmatic in the decisions we make. We'll make the switches where we can, but then what we'll also do is through education, advocacy, and just at times with a fingers crossed ask, how do we engage with the supply base to go, we've got some really big problems in this space, we've got to move forward and find a solution of one way or another. New material, advancements in innovation and technology, or services to accommodate those materials. So again, just quite pragmatic in approach. So again, I've talked for a lot. I've got lots more I can go at, but do you want a bit of Q&A?
Yeah, I was going to say, that'd be great. Tesco's also got a great deal of power, and potentially could just mandate packaging. So your example of packaging being excessive, you could put in regulations that say, well, actually, we won't accept
Yep. Got to be careful what I say. Conscious, got a camera there talking to me, or listening to what I say, I should say. Can we mandate? Yes, we can, and we do in certain ways. So as a business, it's a lot harder to mandate the marketplace. There's competition law and lots of things that kind of shackle my hands behind the back from some of the more excitable days, what I'd like to do. And what the business would like to do. So we have to tread carefully, and that's why I mentioned being on the Advisory Council for Packaging to Government and things like that, is so we can nudge and cajole and try and encourage legislation in the right direction as well. So we can't always do it by ourselves. What we can do, though, is vote with the numbers of the sales of our proportion of the marketplace. So to that point, yes, we've got influence. So at this moment in time, all of my buyers know that they shouldn't be buying a product that isn't recyclable now. So any MPD or new products that someone knocks on the door and says, we want to bring this to Tesco, if it's not recyclable or reusable, we don't want it on our shelves. That in itself is a huge influence, but there's a real commercial impact to our. We're now looking, sort of comparing ourselves to other retailers out there that aren't in that same position, and they've got these new product ranges that are generating growth, and we've just not got it in our business. And that's a commitment we've made, and it's the right one, and eventually people will catch up. In the removal piece, we removed the shrink wrap, the multi-pack of cans of a 4-pack of tomatoes, let's say, because again, it's just a pointless piece of plastic. We can give, if it's 4 for £1, we'll give you 4 for £1, just generate that through the checkout. We don't need the piece of plastic to make it cheaper. It's bonkers, really, because you're using more material, more cost, etc., more from a production line perspective. However, we take that away, we set that up, and we move through the process. A lot of the big brands were really struggling with the pressure of it because all of our competitors didn't move with us. So there is a big piece linked to your question, which is a very good one, of how do we generate better collaboration so we move as a retail front rather than Tesco step in that direction, Sainsbury's go there, someone else, Morrison's, etc. And at the moment, unfortunately, against this agenda, everybody's got a slightly different ask. And what we're trying to do is get to a better place with that. But again, what we're trying to influence as well is areas like government to really consider whether competition law makes sense through the sustainability lens for certain pockets of what's progressing. Because we can't sit down as a bunch of retailers and go, we're going to control the marketplace and we're going to do this. The penalties, the fines are literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds for that. And we have to be very considerate of that challenge while still trying to do the right thing.
Another question?
How do you consider new materials and how you educate the consumer? Because I noticed on your red list, a consumer probably thinks that biodegradable plastic or water-soluble plastic is something good for the environment, but you as red.
Yep.
And do you have a process of evaluating new materials that fit with your structure?
Yeah, I'm actually going to the House of Lords next week to have a conversation about that I'm really looking forward to. So, again, a really good question. The challenge you've got is, again, it comes down to probability. Biodegradable, compostable materials work in certain ways. So from a packaging perspective, when it goes to the, take home compostable. How many people in this room home compost? That's more than the average for the UK. And if you take a lot of that, at that point, if you're putting home compostable out there in the billions of units, how much of it is going to end up in the right place? Does it biodegrade instantly? Most things that biodegrade need, again, I'm sorry if I'm telling you guys what you know, but it needs the right conditions to degrade. And if it's not, most of it, especially a lot of biodegradable materials, it looks like a piece of plastic. So it behaves like a piece of plastic predominantly, unless it's in that set environment. So then when you get to the scale of industrial compostable in particular, which is a stronger red within our thinking at the moment from a categorisation of the materials we want to give customers to use, or to manage, I should say, because they're managing them after life, it just doesn't make sense to us at the moment. But at the same time, full transparency, we use compostable containers in our canteens on our campus because it's in a closed environment and that material can then be controlled and it goes into the right place to be managed responsibly. Perfect, works. If it's going to be a product of the future that ends up in food waste and at that point is going to be managed through the food waste mechanism of the future, if consistent collections come on board and everybody can do it in the same way, then again, degradable, compostable materials that are compatible with that stream absolutely makes sense. But that comes back to my point of we review that list on an annual basis, and it's a bit, we know we might be getting in the way initially, but again, because I deal in millions and billions on a daily basis, I don't want to turn the tap on too early. I've got to almost wait for the options to be there to let the customers be able to do the right thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. James, thank you very much.